Hello and thanks for joining me. I'm in the workshop today and it's a bitterly cold day outside, so I decided to take the time this morning to fit the auxiliary power socket to my Scrambler 1200. So if you have a look at the instrument panel here, there is a blank here for fitting an auxiliary power socket. So that's what I'm going to install today. Here's the kit. Rather than buy a cheaper aftermarket one, I decided to just bite the bullet and buy the proper Triumph one, and then I know it's all just going to be an easy install. And so what you get is that's the actual socket, and you can see it's got a little rain cover flap on the top of it there, little washer that goes underneath there when you install it. That's a rubber boot just to keep the water out of the wiring. And then you get these 3 screws, and they're actually for the instrument console mount, because Triumph recommend that you don't reuse the screws once you've removed them. And in actual fact, you can see on those there's Loctite on those, so those are replacements, and you torque them down to the required setting. Fitting the socket is relatively straightforward. You've got to remove the headlight here to be able to get to the underside of the instrument panel, and then you've got to undo the instrument panel so you can lift it up to get to the back side of where this is, and then fit the socket in, put the wiring in, and then put it all back in. So it's a very straightforward job. However, because the feed to that auxiliary power socket is constantly live, then I'm going to disconnect the battery first before I start fiddling around with it, just for safety. So I'll remove the seat and disconnect the battery, and then I can start fitting the power socket. I'm just checking to make sure I've got all the tools I need here. So I need the Torx drivers here, a small one for undoing the headlight shell, a larger one for undoing the instrument panel, and then a couple of Allen key drivers for undoing the headlight mount and the little windscreen. And of course the most important item, a freshly brewed mug of strong Yorkshire tea. To remove the headlight from the headlight shell, there's a little retaining screw underneath here, which is a Torx driver, and then once you've undone that, you can just twist it. It's got some little lugs, hold it in place, twist it and pull it out. Hopefully you can see here, it's all a bit black on black, but this is actually the auxiliary power socket here, which is tucked inside the headlight. And so because this is permanently live, you can see this has actually got a plastic cover over it, just as and then it's packed with grease as well to protect it. So I need to I'll undo the headlight shell, and then I need to feed this cable back out the back of the shell, and then I can run it up to where it connects to the auxiliary socket. I'm also going to remove the little screen. Angling in to show you this is quite difficult, but we're just underneath the clocks here, and this whole installation is held in by 3 screws. One is here, one is here, and then the third one is just down behind that, and they're tucked right up the back there, and of course there's all this cable in the way, so they're quite fiddly to get to. So I'm probably not going to be able to film me undoing those, but those are the 3 screws that I'm going to undo now. Right, so that's the 3 screws out that hold the instrument console in place. So now I can just lift that up. It's obviously connected by this wire still, but I don't need to connect that, because this allows me then to get to the underside where I can remove this plug blank and then fit the power socket. So here's the power socket, and try and tell us to orient it so that when you flip it up, it's flipping up towards the screen there. But before you fit it in there, there's this nylon washer needs to go on. That goes in there, then the nut goes on the underside. That's the power socket in place there, and I got the orientation so it flips up that way towards the instrument. Now the official torque setting on that brass nut underneath is 2 Newton meters, so that's not very tight at all. So I've located the power lead here, removed it from the back of the headlight shell, so the next job is to get this rubber boot over that, slide it onto the cable, then when I've connected it I can protect it with the rubber boot. So that needs stretching, pulling over there. So I've put a bit of silicone grease on here just to help lubricate it, stretch it over. Now I'm actually using my circlet pliers here just to open up the mouth of that, so that just really helps stretch that over, and then you can see that's in place. Right, now I'm going to remove the plastic protective film off here. So I'm feeding the power cable now, feeding that up behind the clocks next to this is the steering lock. Push the boot down out of the way and get to the socket, and we can then connect that to the power. Now I've fed the boot over the top, so that's protecting it, so I can put the instrument panel back in place now, and that's the socket all connected in. So now need to get the 3 new bolts that came with the kit and put those in to re-secure the instrument panel. I've reconnected the battery, so hopefully now, even with the ignition off, it should have power. So I've just plugged in this plug into the socket here, and we'll see if there is power coming through there now. There we are, so we're hooked up, and that's 12.7 volts, so we now have power to the power socket. Excellent. So now I'm sure you've got the screen back on, and that's the finished job. So that's the new power socket there with a little cover that flips up, and you've got the power socket there next to the steering lock. So that just gives me another option for powering accessories and things. So you've just got to remember with this that the power is on all the time, even when the ignition is off, and that's why when I wired up my sat-nav, if you've not seen that video of me wiring up the sat-nav, I'll put a link to it at the end of this one. I ran it off the USB at the back, and that's actually the cable for my sat-nav connector there. And that goes on and off with the ignition. So I now have that power connector for my sat-nav, which goes off from the ignition, and if you've seen that video, I actually put a little power connector down underneath here, so I can actually always plug something else into that as well. I've got the USB under the seat, and then I've got this auxiliary here, so I think that's pretty well covered. And then if you're wondering what these are here, these are the RAM ball mounts, so that's where I mount my sat-nav on that side, and then I can mount my camera or anything else I want on that side. Okay, hope you found that video useful and interesting. See you next time. Bye.